And I can't get into the details of this, but the Throckmorton plot is the pretext used by William Cecil and Queen Elizabeth I to chop off the head of Mary Queen of Scots. So that heats up the European situation, because the Spanish Armada of 1588 is King Philip's answer to the fact that the Queen has been executed. So this gets to be really big stuff. So Giordano Bruno in London, with the Throckmorton plot, Mary Queen of Scots decapitated, and the King of Spain goes wild and sends the Armada. It's pretty heavy stuff. I hope you agree. So the Venetians are capable of this. This is what Bossi has discovered. That Giordano Bruno, who was later executed himself in Rome, I'm going to be speaking there next week, right in the same square where they burned him. I hope they don't burn me. Campo dei Fiori. I hope to escape. Is a Venetian agent. That's what I relate to, and I've written extensively about that. And of course, the person running all this is Walsingham. We've already seen that he's a Venetian. Let's see some other Englishmen that are actually Venetians underneath. Sir Henry Wotton, maybe not famous, he was the provost of Eton, right? As the Battle of Waterloo was won on the playing fields of Eton, this is the guy who got Eton going in a grand way. He's also the guy who brings in the architecture of Palladio. So you couldn't have any of those English country houses without him. He gets it from the Venetians. John Donne, Venetian, loves the Venetians. No man is an island, right? The famous sermon is an appeal to England to intervene in the 30 Years' War to help the Venetians. So Dudley Carleton, we've seen, he becomes the Foreign Secretary. And the person behind this is someone that you may not know, but you should know, because he is the greatest intelligence game master of the early 17th century. It is Paolo Sarpi. Paolo Sarpi. He is the main theological and juridical consultant of the Venetian oligarchy. He is an intelligence game master without peer. He is one of the people who helped start the 30 Years' War, 1618 to 1648, which killed about 1/3 of the people in Central Europe. Now, this is in the Bodleian Library in Oxford, and you'll see he's Paulus Sarpius Venetus Concilii Tridentini e Viscerator. He's the guy who tore the guts out of the Council of Trent. Trevor Roper loves him. All the British historians love him. He's the greatest of the Protestant historians. Hume loves him. Just endless. Gibbon loves him. They all love him. He's the most famous person in Europe who's not a head of state. And he's a hero of the Protestant world. Shakespeare, on the other hand, anti-Venetian. And I think there's a whole area of research here to reinterpret Shakespeare from the point that what he's fighting is indeed the Cecils and their policy, but it's principally the Venetians. Ben Jonson, the big enemy of Shakespeare, certainly not his friend, is Ben Jonson, as far as I can see. If you look at Ben Jonson, the tribe of Ben, meeting I think at the Mermaid Tavern here, what's the ideology? They love Venice, right? Think of Volpone, right? Johnson's Volpone. I've read Contarini, I've read all the Venetian authors, says the guy in Volpone. Sir Francis Bacon is Cecil's cousin, and he is an avid correspondent of Sarpi. Except that Sir Francis Bacon doesn't want to do all the work himself. He gets a secretary to help him, and that's the young Thomas Hobbes. So Bacon and Hobbes are both heavily imbued with the Venetian outlook because of their traffic with Paolo Sarpi. Later on, Shaftesbury, Ashley Cooper, Pedro the Block, is going to end up in the Venetian register. Now, the problem that the Venetians had at the beginning of the 1600s was everybody was making peace. There's a peace between England and Spain, a peace between France and Spain, there's a peace between Austria and Turkey, and the Venetians don't like that because the Venetians want everybody to be tied up and balanced with wars far away from Venice. Because if people are at peace, they may decide that Venice is very rich and very weak and a choice morsel ready to be plucked. So the thesis is there is an English-Venetian party. My biggest supporter, now I got to all of this myself many years before, but here we have none other than the young Benjamin Disraeli, Lord Beaconsfield, who comes forward in his novel, Coningsby. I recommend you really read Coningsby, 1844. And what he says essentially is that the Whig nobility, the top-level aristocrats, are the Venetian party. That the King of Britain is a doge, meaning the Duke of Venice, a weak elected monarch, and that the king lords and the commons are the Venetian constitution. A quote, "The great object of the Whig leaders in England, from the first movement under Hampden to the more successful one in 1688, the so-called Glorious Revolution, was to establish in England a high aristocratic republic on the model of the Venetian." Absolutely correct. The reign of Queen Anne, and this is the part it's written about by Jonathan Swift. I strongly recommend you look at Jonathan Swift, because he was on the good side. He was on the anti-Venetian side. All the good guys are anti-Venetian. The reign of Anne was a struggle between the Venetian and the English systems. George I then was a doge, George II was a doge, George III wanted not to be a doge, but he couldn't stand it. It had been institutionalized. And then the other guy says, "I'm sure these ideas are not very well known." And Coningsby says, "You have had your history written for you by the Venetian party, and it has been in their interest to conceal it." Read Coningsby. You don't even have to read the whole thing. The operative passages were about 10 or 15 pages where they're talking about this stuff. And I strongly, strongly recommend it. This was part of the Young England movement. It was anti-Whig, pro-Tory, therefore limited. So, the only other thing to add to gunpowder is that gunpowder, of course, targets the Pope and Spain. But what do you do when the Spanish collapse in the 30 Years' War and France becomes the biggest power in Europe, which they do about 1660, 1670, 1680? Well, you have another plot. This one manufactured out of absolutely nothing. This is now Titus Oates, who's simply a mythomaniac. A mythomaniac is a guy who gets a lot of ego gratification out of telling a fantastic story and getting lots and lots of attention. And that's Titus Oates. And he invents the Popish plot of 1678. He comes forward and says, the King of France and the Pope are going to come and take over the country. And people believe it. And some reports say the hysteria is even greater. And they say that to doubt the plot was worse than being a member of the plot, they say. Now, of course, this is carried out by Lord Ashley Cooper, Shaftesbury, with the help of John Locke, the so-called philosopher that I'm going to attack in just a minute. But notice now they've made the adjustment. They redirected hysteria to say, not the King of Spain and the Pope, but now the King of France and the Pope. And what do you get out of this? You get about 2 centuries of warfare. How many dead? What kind of a diminution of the living standard and all that? How much human suffering comes out of this manipulation? Now I really have to ask for your patience, because I have to do an obligatory attack on British empiricism. And I realize that I'm not going to destroy British empiricism in 10 or 15 minutes, but I have to try. I've been trying to destroy American pragmatism for these many years, and I haven't quite succeeded there, but I have to try. One of the biggest problems in understanding these operations is empiricism, or pragmatism, the notion that the sense data are everything. And I'm trying to say, no, they're not. Locke, of course, is a servant of the Venetian party. These are the people who helped to bring you the Titus Oates. In other words, Locke and Shaftesbury, above all, are the people who bring you this Popish plot. And about 30 to 40 people are executed. In other words, more people get killed in this than get killed in the gunpowder, I think. And Locke, of course, is working for this Whig cabal, right? Clifford, Arlington, Buckingham, Ashley Cooper, Lauderdale, right? The names are written across the map of the U.S. even today, right? From Arlington, Virginia to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And again, the method is solid. Now, I have written an essay, presented an essay a couple of years ago in Tunisia at the Colloque de Carthage, the philosophical colloquium of Carthage, which was dedicated to Locke, Descartes, and Leibniz. And I wrote about the fact that the essay on human understanding by John Locke, his main work, is actually copied from Paulo Coelho. He is a plagiarist. He simply takes the main ideas and then expands